Hello, everybody. Thank you guys for joining. Let me share my screen. Right. See some faces. All right. I will start us off with an opening prayer before we do anything else. Please join me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Parents, Jesus and Jimmy Hudson, tell me all of our good ancestors in the spirit world. Good evening. Thank you for allowing us all to come together today, once again this week, to do Ocean Providence online event, but also the Ocean Providence Connect. I really pray that you're able to speak through the speaker And I pray that as we meet, that we can use this meeting as a condition for not just Providence, but also as this consistency for Tremother in her situation. And I really pray, we all pray for her health and her safety and her treatment at the hospital. And I really pray that as we are devoting for her, we are also able to continue doing Providence, continue being inspired for Providence and moving forward in all the activities that we're doing, and that we're able to inspire one another to keep going as well. We thank you so much. We hope that you can be with us through this entire call. Yeah, thank you so much. I pray this in my name, Ju Chong, a third generation member of Blessed Family to Holy Mother Han. Amen. Aju. Hey, thank you everybody for joining. So today is Ocean Providence Connect for anybody new here. This is essentially a monthly networking Zoom call where we invite people from all over the world who are doing Ocean Providence related activities to report and kind of give a brief, or not a brief, share basically the activities and what they're doing to help not just inspire one another, but to also let us know kind of what's going on with Ocean Providence so that we can stay connected, hence the name Connect. And so before we get started, we've decided that every Connect, we're going to have a short intro to Ocean Providence so that we can get an idea of where maybe the presentation falls under this grander scheme. Invite up my mom to give this presentation.
Okay, hello everybody. Usually Chongye gives this little intro, but today she's gonna be the main speaker, so I decided to do this short part. So we're gonna whip through. I mean, it's going to be, a repetition for anybody who's, who's come to the OP Connect before. But yeah, for those of you who are first time here, this is a quick intro, like Ocean Providence 101. Okay, so first thing we wonder about is, do you know how much time your parents spent on the Ocean Providence, right? Like, I'm sure our precious first generations, they all know how much time they spent on Ocean Providence. But some of us second gens and many young people right now, second and third gens, probably might not have seen your parents fish or go to South America or Alaska, these places, and always looking to fish wherever they went. And it's not for fun, right? It's not just a hobby, there was a grander strategy and grander plan behind Ocean Providence. So we're just trying to introduce what actually this thing is. Okay, so here are some pictures of kind of true parents going all over the world, fishing and bringing, people fishing, training, all these things. We see some from Alaska, Korea, in different places. Halibut from Alaska. I see a lot of Alaska. Probably Hawaii too here. And these are some of the pictures. Boston, very famous for the tuna fishing. And true Reverend Moon, True Father, is actually famous for, among people who know, for coming up with an actual method for catching tuna. And even this tiny, Japanese ladies would go out and catch tuna, right, with this method. So it was very efficient and kind of an amazing thing he did. Also, he spent some time on, boat building. He actually almost on a daily basis at one point went to a boat factory, looking at the lines and the designs and always kind of making, improvements, spending a lot of time on these projects to create, the best boat that he, from his experience. Some of the pictures of boat factory back in the day. Some larger boats were built, and some of the larger boats that were built, one or two of the larger boats that were built back then is still being used by Ocean Peace, the company. And many distribution and the processing plants and restaurants were started. So what's all this, right? These each things seem very interesting and it seemingly doing something, but what is actually the goal of Ocean Providence? Why do all this, right? So what is, first of all, before we think about like, ocean providence, just a part of a grander providence, right? So what is the goal of actually the Family Federation, our movement? Quickly, history, Family Federation for War, Peace, and Unification was established as the official name on May 1st, 1994. And the goals you can see from its name itself, right? Family Federation for World Peace and Unification. So when you think about world peace, what do you think about, right? And when you think about unification, what do you think about, right? So you can, each person might think about certain things, but generally, right, we all agree these things are the things that we think about when we truly think about what world peace is or what, world unification might mean, right? So these are actually in our name. And these are the goals that, Reverend Moon and Holy Mother Han, they've kind of paved the road for. So of course, right, ocean providence is part of that goal. Okay, so in True Father, Reverend Moon's autobiography, from chapter 1, it just starts, right, with he starts talking about food, right? How he wants to give food, and that's the beginning of his autobiography, and he says this quote where he says, "I want to tear down the walls between religions and between races and fill the gap between the rich and the poor. And once that is done, we can reestablish the world of peace that God created in the beginning. I'm talking about a world where no one goes hungry and no one sheds tears." So this is a very significant quote, I think, is in there, right? It's kind of encompasses what is his goal. What does he think about when he says world peace, right? So in there, he says, reestablish a world of peace that God created in the beginning, right? We have to tear down the walls between religions, tear down the wall between races, and fill in the gap between the rich and the poor, right? Which means resolution of poverty and hunger and equalization. So, as we all know, through divine principle and all these things, our movement is not just a spiritual movement, right? Both sides are equally important, right? And in God's Will and the Ocean, Reverend Moon says, "I am the founder of this gigantic spiritual movement, but I am also laying the foundation to solve future physical problems of the world." So if, somebody, can you imagine if somebody says, "I'm here to save the world," suddenly, right? Do you imagine them to work on only the internal problems of the world, or both internal and physical, right? So it is a natural logical progression to think that if you say you're the true parents of humankind, of course they're thinking about solving physical and spiritual problems of the world. So, and he says, "Since I am so enthusiastic and have so many plans about the ocean, anyone who comes to the Unification Church cannot help but pay attention to the ocean." So that's what he said. So basically, ocean providence is in a short, quick sentence, right? The ocean providence is a heavenly plan to solve the physical problems of the world. So that's where the puzzle fits, right? Ocean providence is part of the providence, the grander providence of God and true parents, and ocean providence specifically is that part of the puzzle. So some quotes really whip through quickly. He's saying, "Why am I doing all this? It's because as the true parent, I want to take responsibility for all suffering from hunger. My heart is not to give up on anyone in the world. They are all our brothers and sisters." Also, he said, "We are the true parents who came to the earth to save all humanity. All people are our children. How can we not be concerned about those who are starving to death? The reason I'm engaged in ocean enterprises is that through them, we can save those people." So, right, ocean providence is true parents' plan to solve the world's poverty and hunger problems. So that's the conclusion. Very, very quick. There's so many strategies and so many background info and why hunger, why poverty, but this is basically in a nutshell what ocean providence is. All right, thank you so much. And today's presenter, please let's welcome Chong-Hye-Ju, talking about mariculture in Sitka, Alaska.
Thanks, Oma. Yeah, I'm a little sick, so if I start coughing in the middle, I apologize. Yeah, thank you, Oma. Before I start, I just want to let you guys know that we are going to be having Q&A at the end, not just for myself, but also just general Ocean Province Q&A. So just keep those in mind and um you can put those in the chat when the time comes. So, all right. Alaska Aquaculture Semester in Sitka, Alaska. This was a program I did last fall semester. So from late August to early December, I was there for the whole time. And the reason why I'm going to be talking about this experience, like it's not even a church program, but the reason why I want to talk about it is because True Father and True Parents, wanted to kind of create programs. Like they've talked about creating programs that can help train second gen and just members in general. Yeah, train members to basically develop capabilities and skill sets that could help the world. And I kind of, when I went here, the idea that I had was that this could be a model for kind of what we could go off of as like a successful program that does something like that. So that's kind of why I am going to be sharing my experience. So first, before I go into the actual experience itself, I want to talk about the program itself and what exactly it is. So what is the Alaska Aquaculture Semester Program? It's essentially a hands-on aquaculture and mariculture semester program for anyone that is interested in the industry. And when I say anyone is allowed to come, I mean anyone, right? People like the people in my group were a mix of so many different backgrounds. Some people were like, there was one veteran, there was someone who used to do journalism, there was a commercial fisherman, and there were of course a bunch of students who were in marine science or environmental science, things like that. So a big background, anybody could join, so it's a really cool program, and you can see how hands-on it is just from these three photos, right? We go out to the ocean a lot, we're doing things, we're touching fish, doing all that kind of stuff. Now, what purpose does this program serve? This program is essentially a place to cultivate interest in mariculture while also equipping students with the basic skills needed in the industry. In essence, the program looked to expand the aquaculture and mariculture industry through exciting participants and raising them to be able to thrive in the industry in the future. It not only helped spread awareness of the methods of aquaculture and mariculture, but the program had also seen kind of this record of students returning somewhere to Alaska to pursue the study there. And so it was basically raising up a new generation of people who could help expand the regional industry itself. Now, before I move forward, I'm just going to give a couple definitions of aquaculture and mariculture because I think something important to understand if you want to understand what even this program is about, right? So aquaculture. Aquaculture is kind of like agriculture, right? Except for aqua. So it's basically the controlled breeding, raising, and harvesting of aquatic animals or plants in fresh and salt water. And mariculture is the controlled breeding, raising, and harvesting of aquatic animals or plants in salt water or brackish water. So just basically the marine environment. Now, what about in the context of Alaska? So it's a little weird. It might be a little bit confusing, but kind of the basic idea is that aquaculture in Alaska is only for salmon enhancement, for enhancement only. All other forms of fin fish farming is actually illegal. On the other hand, and so that also goes for mariculture, you're not allowed to culture any saltwater fish, and so mariculture in Alaska is focused on shellfish and seaweed farming, both of which are considered by many to be some of the most sustainable types of farming. Now, I mentioned salmon enhancement, right? What is enhancement? It's essentially hatching and raising fish until a certain size and releasing them into bodies of natural water to live out the rest of their lives. Basically, what you're doing is producing fish and then putting them out into the wild to enhance the already existing populations, wild populations out there. So that's what enhancement is. And so salmon enhancement is spawning salmon, hatching them, and raising them until their later juvenile stages, kind of like smolt. And then they're released into the ocean to live the rest of their lives out in the wild until they come back up the rivers to spawn. So definitions over. Sorry about that. Just needed to get that out there so people can understand a little better. Now, I'm actually going to go into the program content and the experience that I went through itself. So just an educational overview of the things that I learned, right? So this was a semester program, meaning that it was educational. It had lectures and it had classroom settings. And we had different courses that we were learning. So these are just basically the courses that I was taking. First was Alaskan salmon culture, intro to mariculture, fish pathology, Alaskan aquaculture, small vessel operator, outboard motor maintenance, cold water survival, and fisheries internship in the industry. So the weekly schedule kind of looked like this, where from Monday to Thursday every week from roughly 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., we would either do lecture on the specific topic or do kind of an activity, hands-on practice of things. And then Friday and Sunday was when we did internships or just our own thing. So one of the great things about this program was that we were able to actually intern. We were able to choose from a list of farms that we could intern at. And we would basically spend that weekend time to work at this internship area and basically connect not only with the industry itself, but also actually practice, specific skills in an actual work setting. So it was a really good part of the program that I feel was a part of it. And some deviation to this weekly schedule, because there were some, was sometimes we took trips to outside of Sitka. So we traveled around. We didn't just stay in Sitka. We traveled to other places in Southeast Alaska, like to Ketchikan and Juneau, or we had like longer boat trips to places like the Hidden Falls Hatchery. So that's just some examples of deviation, but there were a lot of spontaneous things going on sometimes because the weather in Sitka was kind of unpredictable. Now I'm going to go through some of the more hands-on things that I was able to do. So first, salmon enhancement. We had lectures on Pacific salmon enhancement strategies, and we were also able to actually experience it firsthand. So these photos are from this hatchery called Medvici Hatchery that's in the local area. And we were actually allowed to help them out a little bit that day. So this is chum salmon. And this was basically their spawning. So here we're just dissecting the fish to kind of get a vague understanding of their biology. And then here you can see I'm basically cut open the female. We killed them first, of course. We cut open the female, take the eggs out, and the eggs eventually fall into this bucket. And we take the male and squeeze their milk out to mix with the female's eggs, and then we mix them up. And then eventually there's a whole process, but it eventually goes into incubators and will eventually hatch into babies. Some other things we did, other than dissections, right? And looking at kind of diseases that they might have. And also under the microscope, this is right out of the hatching. This is a salmon alvin. So they still have the yolk sac. And they're basically not eating anything. They're still getting nutrients from this yolk sac. It's very cool to see. But the other thing that we did was collect otoliths. So what otoliths are they're basically the ear bones of fish. And salmon, you can see here on this bottom right photo, we basically cut a wedge out of their head to get access to their brain cavity, because right next to the brain cavity are these two empty spaces, and that's where the ear bones are. And what these ear bones can tell us are the age of the fish, but it also tells us actually which hatchery the fish comes from. So what's really cool about hatchery salmon is that when they're before they're born, when they're during the egg stage, they go through this process that actually lays down lines on their ear bones, and it's basically like a barcode. So every single hatchery in the Pacific actually has a barcode for the salmon that they hatch. And so if you open up a fish and get their otoliths and you're able to read the barcode, you can actually tell, oh, this salmon is from a hatchery in Kodiak. Oh, this salmon is from a hatchery in Japan. So it's very cool. It's a very cool organized process to ensure everyone knows where all the salmon are from. Sorry, I yapped a lot about that just now. But yeah, some other things. So this was Hidden Falls. And here you can kind of see this was right like when the salmon run was happening. So there's just like so much salmon in one place. It was insane. It was also very stinky because there were a lot of dead ones. here you can see I have a big long net because we were scooping up dead fish that we could take in to inspect for any diseases and issues. And some other things, so this is coho spawning, so silver salmon. So salmon, the different Pacific salmons, they spawn at different times in the season. So coho was kind of like the last one that we as a program got to see. And this is us seining all those salmon out. So we were literally wrangling and fighting these fish. And it was cold. Anyway, we put these fish into this round pond. Once we collected the correct ratio of females to males, and then we would basically, this is how you dispatch the fish. This is how you knock them out humanely. You basically crush their skulls in one hit, 1 or 2 hits with the bat. This is me doing it. And then we spawn them. So eggs, milt, and then for coho specifically, as well as king salmon, we usually take a kidney sample because there's something called bacterial kidney disease that a lot of salmon end up getting. So that's something we want to avoid. So that was salmon enhancement. Now is seaweed and kelp farming, which is also something cool we did. So obviously we did lectures on kelp farming basics, but we were also able to do things like collection of tissue that was ready to basically spawn, a release of spores, and then setting out gear and line to actually set up a farm for the university. So here is just some photos, kind of an overview photo. But this one here, you can see this is the actual gamete of the kelp. So kelp, like plants also have sperm and eggs, right? So this is the female gamete, and you can see the eggs at the tips here, which I thought was really cool. And this is us setting up some of the gear for the farm. Yeah, and just some more photos, right? This is a collection of the actual kelp. So this is called bull kelp, very popular, very common up there. And yeah, we basically grabbed them straight out of the water from the wild. And this dark patch of tissue is where all the gametes are. So we basically take all this kelp, cut out all this dark spot, all this basically, yeah, gamete tissue, I guess, and then prepared them. We washed them, cleaned them, and yeah, kind of got them ready. And then basically we would, for kelp farming, you basically have these spools of line. And what you do is you basically make the spores or the gametes come out of this tissue and then pour that all into this water. And after a long time, you'll see that those kelp, those spores actually end up settling on this spool of line and then they'll start growing. So here you can see like a blade is growing, right? Which is really cool. And these two photos on the bottom left and the bottom right are basically photos that showcase more larger scale operations for this kind of kelp farming, kelp hatchery work. Now we actually also set up a farm for the university as well. We also helped a different seaweed farm prepare their gear as well. So this is what these photos are kind of showing. So this is just setting up the farm, putting the anchor down. This is us kind of taking the spool of kelp line and twirling it around another line that would be set into the water and let them grow. And this bottom right photo is actually kind of a progress photo of what that kelp looks like now. So this kelp on this bottom right is stuff that, you know, maybe I helped plant, which is really cool to think about. So that's kelp stuff. Next is oyster or shellfish farming. So we had lectures about shellfish, oyster breeding techniques, and touring farms. So this one was the least hands-on like this was the one where we didn't do as much like hands-on oyster stuff. It was a lot more kind of going to tours, doing tours of different farms and kind of yeah. Anyway, so this is these are just some photos of what kind of shellfish we talked about. So this one is abalone. This is a horse clam, which is really interesting because it has some resident crabs in there. These are oysters, and I think this was at a NOAA facility. And then this is microalgae. So microalgae is the thing you actually feed oysters. It's the thing they eat. And these are some farms that we toured. So this is I forget the name. I think it was like Blue Star, but this one was one of the bigger farms or one of the medium-sized farms, and they had a really good system going on. So this is kind of one of the types of cages that you use for oyster farming. It's called a flip farm. This is what their oysters look like. Very beautiful, very gorgeous. And this is called, this thing tumbles. So these tumbling things are, you take oysters out of the cages every once in a while so that they don't grow any like barnacles or, weird growth on them. And then you put them through tumbling to help that process of cleaning the oysters, sizing the oysters, and getting rid of any dead oysters, and then putting them back in the cage to grow. And the ocean basically provides all that they need to grow, which is great. You literally just put them in boxes and take care of them once in a while, but very simply, of course. So yeah, this is an example of the flip farm. Some big oysters. And then this is me kind of helping sort out at a different farm called Tommaso Shellfish. So this one was a family-owned, much smaller scale farm, which was really cute. It was really fun to work with them. I really liked working with the oysters. Now those are like the main three things, but we did have other topics of education that I mentioned before. For example, outboard motor maintenance. So this one, like we didn't go super intensive into it, but we did learn kind of the basic structure and anatomy of an outboard, and also kind of what to look for, what are common problems, what's a basic way to diagnose what might be a problem, right? So that was very, very good. This one, we were given the opportunity to also tour some processing facilities. So this one is a seaweed processing facility called Barnacle Seafoods. They have a lot of cool seafood products made out of kelp, which is really cool. We also went to a fish processing unit. They didn't allow us to take pictures though, so I don't have any of that. But it was very, very cool to see how all of the processing, like all the stuff going on in there. Yeah, and we also got to trailer as well as drive boats. So this one is a skiff that you see me driving, but we also did get to drive a center console as well. We also learned about invasive species and how to look for them under a microscope. This is not an invasive species, but I put it there because it's cool. We also learned cold water survival. So we learned how to put flares on. And this one is kind of a really fun simulation of like, if you're on a boat and the boat suddenly has a leak and you're taking on water, and you basically have to work with your teammates to like, with your crew, to pump the water out off the deck and also find the leak and then, fix the leak temporarily at least. And it was a very fun simulation, but I feel like it kind of gave a good idea of what that kind of situation might look like out on the water. And we also did fish pathology. So that's basically looking at fish, dead fish, and kind of diagnosing what the issue with them was. So here you can kind of see this guy's eye is popping out a little bit. That's called expophthalmia. I'm not too sure the pronunciation, but it's basically a common thing you see in hatchery baby fish where their eyes are popping up. And, you kind of see these things, you diagnose the problem, and you also see whether or not they have diseases that you should be worried about. And whether or not you need to treat your fish population. Other than that, we also had some in-classroom activities. So things like marketing practice. So one of the things we learned was about how, like, as someone who starts a fish farm, right? You not only need to know how to farm, but you also need to know how to market and how to do business, because if you don't know how to enter the market or the business, then you're not going to make any money off of your production, right? So this was we did some practice with that by doing elevator pitches for like seafood products and stuff like that. We also had a book discussion on a book called Eat Like a Fish by Brent Smith, who was kind of a commercial fisherman who turned into a restorative ocean farmer for oyster and kelp. So it was a good book. It was really interesting, just talking about his journey through that. And it also kind of like brought up really interesting topics in our class about kind of the future potential for kelp farming in America. So that was very interesting. And we also had Zoom meetings with a lot of different organizations that were related to mariculture. So for example, the Alaska Department of Fish and Game, who you need to talk with in order to get a permit to one of the many permits in order to start a fish farm or an a farm. Um, so yeah, we even joined like a Zoom meeting for like a seaweed farmer conference kind of, which was also really cool because we got to see kind of how the leading figures in the seaweed industry in Alaska, what kind of things they were talking about, what kind of things were going on in the industry right now, and also what problems they were going through and what they were trying to do to solve them. So it was very interesting to, be able to go attend these Zoom talks. And outside of that, like I mentioned, right, our classes went from like 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. We had a lot of time outside of that to ourselves. So we all like went out and did like our own activities. We did extra boating. We saw whales a lot of the times. We went tide pooling, at night and during the day, kind of finding really cool animals. We also went to community events. So this was the Alaska Day festivities. Yeah, one of the other things that I think this program was great with doing for us was that it helped us connect with the community as well. So for example, we went to the Mariculture conference. That was the first time we went to one of the events as a class together. And we were also invited to a lot of the tribal or indigenous events that were happening. There's a big indigenous community and presence in Sitka, which was really cool to see kind of how much say that they had compared to other places that I've seen, and like just how much more involved they were in the community and whatever is going on there. And there were also just other local festivities and events that we were, you know, urged to join and go to, and also even help out at. Now, a big portion of this was the internship. So the internship portion, I did 3 different internships. So the first was the hatchery internship, where I helped with chum and pink salmon spawning, as well as some coho care. So just to quickly show you, this is coho care, coho salmon babies. That was me feeding them. For time's sake, I'm not going to show the whole video. But yeah, we did things like weighing the salmon and just taking care of them in general. There's the babies in a bucket. Yep. And we also helped with coho head collection. I didn't have any photos of spawning because usually when you're spawning, you're very locked in. So there's no one's really taking their phones out to take a photo. So I didn't have any for that, but you know, it was very fun. Another part was the Yukon Chinook research. So this was research to kind of look at like a growth rate and how feed and temperature and these different factors factor into how well a Yukon Chinook or king salmon will grow. And yeah, these are just the baby king salmon. And I was basically helping feed them and clean their tanks and stuff. They were very cute, my babies. And then my final internship portion was the aquarium internship. So this was at the same place as so this is all happening at the Sitka Sound Science Center. I forgot to mention that was the thing. And this aquarium internship was really fun. I learned a lot about different animals and taking care of them. So yeah, I did various things for them, various responsibilities. But yeah, this is kind of just an overview of all the animals I saw. It's not all of them. This is just some of them, but they were so cute, so precious. And I feel like it really helped me connect a lot to the ocean and to God through these little guys. Um, but yeah, so this is just some more photos of kind of, yeah, this is me working with baby jellyfish. So they're so small you can't even see them from this kind of distance. This is a wolf eel eating an urchin. This is a greenling that had parasites on it and is being treated for it. This is one of the intertidal tanks. This is preparing feed. So we literally caught a crab and chopped it in half to feed to one of the eels. This is a basket star sleeping, and this is a blind rockfish. So just some really cool things. I feel like I experienced a lot of excitement during this aquarium portion. Just learning new things about different animals, I think. Yeah. And another thing that this program had was final projects. Again, it was school, right? So we did have homework and we did have final projects. So the final projects were internship reports, where we were given the opportunity to basically teach others what we learned during our internships. But the final project that I want to talk about the most is the farm project. This project was basically a project where we choose an animal in Alaskan waters, an aquatic animal in Alaskan waters, and develop a farm design and a business plan to then be presented to class. So I thought this was a really good way to kind of help us take what we learned during class and apply it to create something for ourselves, right? So the bottom here is kind of just examples of like the things that I designed for this project. And I had to think about these different things like, you know, like density of the population in round ponds and like the size of the tank and how much water it should hold, how many, heath trays I need to have, right? And the animal and kind of like the overall layout of the aquarium or farm. But yeah, it was a very cool project, and I feel like I learned a lot about the process of, we had to even go through the process of like seeing how to get permits. So which permits we had to get, how much these permits cost, and kind of basically the whole process except for actually going through with it. So it was very educational. Now, that's the program. So maybe some of you guys are like, okay, why does that matter? But so I'm going to talk about why this is kind of relevant to Ocean Province. So mariculture and aquaculture in general is relevant to Ocean Province, right? This photo on the right is a page taken out of the 20th anniversary booklet that basically has all of the Ocean Province Foundation that was created during the 20 years that True Parents were here from 1970. Or yeah, I think the 20-year foundation of Ocean Providence that True Parents had established in America, and aquaculture is literally one of the pages, right? So True Father, in discussion of Ocean Providence, has mentioned many industries that we as members were to enter. And one of these industries was the aquaculture industry. It was one of the ways that True Parents saw could help starving people. And True Father says in the development of the oceanic realm, the unification members will have to learn fishing, hunting, and farming in the future. It's basic knowledge as a human being, but don't you think you won't lose anything by giving it a try to acquire the capabilities? It doesn't take long to learn. Once you have the skills, you go to Africa and do some service activities for about a year. We can begin tourism and bring people about average income to tour the farms and fish farms in Texas. So this is just one quote example where fish farming and aquaculture is mentioned, but there are many more. And basically the point I'm trying to make is that aquaculture was part of the vision that True Parents had for Ocean Providence, and going out to help starving people. And right now, right, when we look at the future of food production, we see that there's this need to move towards something more sustainable. Currently, mariculture, specifically of oysters and seaweed, has been seen as some of the most eco-friendly type of farming, not just producing food, but also having the potential to help restorative efforts of ecosystems when done correctly. So this industry is also fairly new compared to other industries in America and compared to other places like in Asia, and has a lot of potential for growth and development, which is something that True Father often saw as something the movement should take advantage of, right? Often he went into the fishing industry because he saw that there was something that could be developed more. So that's something I feel is kind of what the state of aquaculture is right now as well. There's a lot of room for development and a lot of potential for more people to get involved and the right people to get involved. Now, one thing about this program that I feel did good was that it provided a really good environment to connect with both people, the industry, and with nature. In fact, it felt like a really long workshop. I kept calling my mom throughout this whole program and being like, oh my gosh, it's like a workshop. It's like a workshop, right? Like it felt like a workshop because it was a program where you got really close to the people you work with. And it also enhanced your connection to the industry itself through internships, tours, and even Zoom meetings. And if the program had been a workshop, it would have fit right in, I feel like, with all the other workshops that we have. And again, this is something I mentioned very briefly in the beginning, but I feel like this program could be a very good model for technical education and training for our movement, right? I wanted to add that this program gave me a clearer picture of what technical education could look like for a movement in the future. It promoted purpose in what was being done, teaching the basics of the good and bad effects of aqua and mariculture on people, economy, and environment. So kind of giving us the why. And it also made room for fun, creating this environment where participants could cultivate a joy and love for the industry and the work. Right. One of the things that True Parents wanted to do with ocean training and through the Good Goes and pretty beautiful boats like those, right, was to cultivate kind of True Parents essentially wanted members to learn to love the ocean, to learn to love the ocean, to want to go out to the ocean, and to want to do ocean providence. And I feel like this program did a really good job of cultivating that kind of like joy and desire to go out to the ocean. And I felt like that was really good. Also, of course, it was practical, teaching us maritime skills and knowledge that's not only useful in mariculture or aquaculture, but could also be easily transferable to other fisheries or maritime work. It also connected us to the locals around us, right? Not only were we urged to participate in local activities, we were also given the opportunity to talk with people in the industry, even going so far as to visit or intern at various farms to learn from them. So it wasn't a self-contained program that was very very exclusive, right? But it was one that actually allowed us to expand our horizons and make connections with other people outside. Not only this, but it also allowed us to put into practice things we learned in theory. Much of the education was hands-on, and even the final projects were largely geared toward allowing us to think critically. Right? The final farm project, for example, had us take what we learned in classes and create something new from it, helping us practice vision and presentation. And, throughout this entire program, I actually kept imagining a future program in our movement that could be very similar, right? Where we teach practical skills or specialized skills that would help us help the world's physical problems and connect us to players in related industries and help us practice creating our own solutions to problems that we see. All of this, of course, if it's for our movement, right, it would be under True Parents teaching and with our understanding of God and what the world needs and providence. Now, some personal thoughts. Just a very short, super short testimony about ocean training, because obviously there was a lot of training on the ocean for this, right? Now, I want to mention that one of the things that I didn't show here was scuba diving. I did do scuba diving, but I didn't have any photos because we were underwater and I didn't have an underwater camera. So, but I did do scuba diving. And the thing is, I actually feel like through scuba diving, I was able to understand ocean training a lot more, right? The value of ocean training. One of the things that True Parents say is that the ocean builds character. And part of why is because of how unpredictable being out on the ocean is. I personally, in the past before this program, I've never actually been on a boat or in a situation on the ocean that was actually scary, right? I've never been out in like storming weather, and my understanding of this thought that the ocean was unpredictable was very surface level. It was very theoretical, right? But when I actually went diving, we actually dove when it was hailing and it was kind of storming. So it actually taught me how terrifying the ocean was. And also being underwater, under 30 feet of water is like so scary, right? It's like I can drown actually. Um, so it taught me how scary it was, but it also taught me how to overcome that fear and how to have faith and how to quickly solve problems that came my way in a way that didn't endanger me or others around me. And I had to learn and practice all of this on the spot. And it was very quick learning, right? And it built my character that way. I was able to see beyond what was scary and see how wonderful it was underwater. And I actually do feel like my character had an upgrade during those dives. Typically, I'm a very anxious person and I let anxious thoughts consume me. But during that moment of scuba diving, I was actually learning how to overcome that actively. And I feel like that's one of the reasons why ocean training is so important, right? It really does force you to build your character in ways that you didn't think you needed to. One final thought about the ocean, because, I was very close to the ocean this entire semester, right? The experiences I had in Sitka, Alaska are undeniably ones I will treasure forever, not just because I learned a lot, but also because of how much I was able to connect to the ocean. It was the first time I lived in a place where the ocean was right in my backyard for such a long time. I literally could walk to the beach within like 3 minutes, right? It was the first time I so quickly and easily considered a place I lived temporarily a home. Even just the constant presence of the ocean so close to me actually healed a lot of anxiety that had been lingering inside of me. I've had something like resentment or something like that in myself for a while. Um, but I think, this time spent by the ocean had definitely actually just washed most of, if not all of it away. And ever since then, I've been a lot more at peace. Yeah. Thank you for listening. Okay. Yay. Okay, it was a little longer than I thought, but thank you guys for sitting through that. Okay, now we're going to go into the Q&A portion. So if anybody has any questions with regards to what I just presented or about Ocean Providence in general, please feel free to either share it in the chat or unmute yourself and ask a question.
Of question.
Yes, go ahead.
It's Uncle Frank here.
Um,
At the places you were working with, especially in the salmon fisheries and the salmon hatcheries, were they fin clipping the salmon? And do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah. So the pink and chum salmon are like a large production. So they don't have time to fin clip all of those, but the coho, the silver salmon, they do fin clip. So
And king?
that's actually something that they usually do in most salmon hatcheries. They don't do pinks or chums, but they will do cohos and kings.
I see.
Yeah. It's a lot slower of a process, which is why.
I've seen that on the Oregon coast here, in an effort to try to um, let wild fish spawn
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things that they do.
Okay, I was wondering if Alaska was doing that also.
Yeah. Thank you, Uncle Frank. Michael asks, what do I miss most about my time in Sitka? I really liked the salmon. They were so cute. Um, I think it's just like, yeah, I don't know. It was nice, especially during the salmon run season, like that spawning period. Toward the end, it wasn't happening as much, but whenever I went out to the beach, I would see salmon like flying across the horizon line. It was really cool. And I think it was really nice to be able to just like walk outside and just see all those salmon. Very fun. But yeah, I think I miss the ocean the most. I'm landlocked now, so my sister asks for your aquarium internship, why are these fish in rehab? Don't fish have a shorter lifespan? Wait, like the blind rockfish. Wait, what? Okay. Oh, why are these fish in rehab? Don't fish have a shorter lifespan? Okay. I don't really understand the question totally. Okay, so the purpose of that aquarium specifically, I guess I'll just say, was to educate the public on the natural ecosystem in that area. So, yeah, so like most aquariums, they kind of put fish in together in one tank, and you won't usually see those fish together in the wild, but this aquarium specifically made sure that all the animals in one tank were what you would see naturally in the wild as well. So it was very like a natural based, like natural habitat based aquarium design. Yeah, I don't know what you're asking so much. Like the blind rockfish. I mean, I think he's living a happier life in there than getting eaten out there, I guess. Okay, my mom asks, you can potentially plan and execute a type of fish farm now, provided you have funds and a team. Yeah, I think so. Like, honestly, like we really did go through all the steps you need, at least in Alaska, that you would need to look into to basically develop your own farm design and farm type and like a proposal. Um, so maybe, yeah, like honestly, the biggest thing would be like funds, because it is very expensive to start a farm. Okay, Michael, wait, I lost it. Michael says, what percent of rockfish in the wild are blind? I don't know, Michael. I'm not too sure. Um, I'm not sure how they caught it either. So this aquarist, his name is Matt, but he actually scuba dives on the weekends, goes out in the wild, and based on the list that the government allows him to take, he takes animals with him. Yeah, so that might be how he caught it, but I honestly don't know how he found that blind rockfish. Okay, how did you know he was blind? He did not have his eyes. They were not there. Okay. All right. Anyway, any other questions other that are not related to this blind rockfish? If not, we can go ahead.
Wait,
Oh yes.
just not a question, just a comment at the end when you mentioned how much you appreciated being close to the ocean. I felt like a home. I really enjoyed your overall sharing. It seemed like you were like it was the right place for you, and just learning more about ways to apply the industry to the ocean providence to the industry. And I'm excited to see how we can replicate stuff like that in our own movement, but also you sharing like how grateful you are that you live by the ocean or by the ocean. I live by the ocean, like a minute away. Like I can see it from my window. And I rarely ever, like unless it's the summer, use that to my advantage or to, I can go for a walk, but to, it made me feel like I'm taking it for granted by hearing you share about such a enriching experience. So got me thinking as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Thank you. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I forgot to mention one thing. I highly urge you guys, if you're interested, you can totally join this program. I don't think there's an age limit. There was someone who was like over 40 in that group. So if you're interested, or if you know someone who might be interested, please share it with them. It's open to anyone, even if they're not students. So right. Oh, Uncle Jorge says the salmon raised in the farm can reproduce. Oh, and in Kodiak, they put some chemicals to infertilize. So in Southeast Alaska, they can reproduce. So they all send out and then they come back to the same hatchery and then they just keep getting reproduced, send out, come back, reproduce. So they can reproduce in the southeastern hatcheries. All right. I think I'll move forward since our time is also running out. So, all right. If you guys have any more questions, feel free to email us. But yeah, announcements. If you have a project or program that you would like to present at a future Connect program, please feel free to contact my mom at minovis@gmail.com. And the next Connect will tentatively, this is wrong. This is actually today's. But the next one will tentatively be next third Thursday of the month of March. I don't know what date that is. We'll send out an announcement once it comes. But sorry, I didn't update that. But yeah, that's it for that. Yes, that is it for me. I think we can end off with a ending prayer if anybody feels inspired to give one.
Maybe you don't understand my question,
Oh,
because in the hatchery in Kodiak, they reproduce and they release in the river so they can go, the small fish, they can go to the ocean and come back. But when they come back, they cannot reproduce naturally. That was my question. So maybe
I see.
they can reproduce in the wild when they release. That for me was always a pain because why you unfertilize the fish if you are going to release, you release full equipped, so they can reproduce freely when they come back to the river, but they cannot reproduce.
Oh,
Did you
like
learn
in
that?
Kodiak, that's the way they do it.
Yes.
I see. Yeah, here, or not here, I'm in New Jersey. In Sitka, so they do take, like, they don't let them reproduce in the wild. They do take them into the hatchery and then spawn them there. But they don't take all of them. Like, some of the salmon do reproduce.
They release in the wild.
Yeah, like
The
when
fish.
they get raised until like a certain size and then they get released.
Okay, when they come back, they can reproduce naturally.
Yeah,
Are you sure?
yes. Yeah, no, they can reproduce naturally. I don't know. Yeah. I'm not sure like what they do in Kodiak, but that is the case. They can reproduce naturally. They don't let them reproduce naturally. Like they do take the salmon out of the water and spawn them in the hatchery, but many of the salmon that don't actually get caught can still reproduce. Yeah, I hope that clears that up. Yeah.
Maybe we can
They
get
yeah.
that. It's a very interesting thing because they have the organ, but they cannot reproduce in the wild. Means
Mm.
they go up the river, but they cannot. Their egg and the sperm they are not fertilized.
Yeah, no, that's not the case in Sitka. Sitka, they can get fertilized. Yeah, so I'm not sure what's going on in Kodiak, honestly. I only know like Southeast Alaska, but
You have a wild fish, okay? You have a wild fish, and the one is raised in the farm. The one is released from the farm, they cannot reproduce. It's chemical castrated. I don't know how to say.
oh, okay. So there is like that kind of thing, but that's not what the salmon hatcheries in Southeast Alaska do. The goal,
Okay,
yeah, that is a different thing. Yeah.
that's good. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. All right. Does anybody want to offer a prayer to end us off today? Maybe oh, Uncle Frank.
Yeah, I can press.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Heavenly Parent, for this beautiful, wonderful sharing today about uh, uh, the education that she went through in Southeast Alaska. And let us always be conscious of our true Father's goals as he laid them out as through Ocean Church, Ocean Challenge, and Alaska, and wherever he went, and all the time that he spent on the water with us in order to train us up to participate and take ownership of the marine environment. And we are so fortunate on this earth to have so much water, salt water, seawater, and fresh water, lakes and rivers, streams, everything coming off the mountains and everything in the ocean. All the beautiful different types of creatures that are a gift to us, really from our Heavenly Parent, that we can observe and learn from, and that we can multiply our relationship with our natural environment. So thank you for this talk today. Please bless this young lady as she's continuing on her educational journey and sharing with us. Thank you, and I offer this prayer in the name of Frank Mihoko Button, blessing.
Thank you, Uncle Frank. And thank you everybody for joining us today.
Thank
Have
you,
a good
everybody.
have a good rest of the week. I'll see you guys next week.
Thank you. Very good job.
Thank you.
Congratulations.